Hi guys, welcome to my Yosemite Beta 1 review. In the previous video I showed you how to install the new macOS Beta on a virtual machine created with VMware Fusion starting from a macOS Mavericks operating system physically installed on a Mac computer. As promised, I will describe the features of the new operating system and what I think about it. The first thing you notice when you access the new desktop is the different look of the new operating system. First of all, this dock that has become flat, unlike the previous versions where it was 3D, as you can see here from I got here the Mavericks dock. I'm not personally big on this new dock. I don't like it personally, and it's really clear that the general look of Yosemite has been strongly influenced by iOS, and that's clear especially for the colors of the icons like App Store and especially Finder. And I'm not the only one who dislikes the new Finder icon. I had kinda envisioned this change. In fact, somebody on LinkedIn some days ago said there was a gap between the mobile version of Apple operating system and the desktop version, and I have suggested that probably Yosemite will fill this gap, and in fact that happened. Anyway, apart the look, let's focus on what I care the most, which is performance. Alright, a new interesting feature of the new macOS is the way they change Spotlight, which shows suggestions from Internet, iTunes, App Store, and more. Here you can see. And for example, if I look for something, I don't know why I'm thinking of this. You'll be shown here the movie, for example, but here you have the Wikipedia, in case you don't know who Thor was, the dictionary, and all the related files if I had some file named Thor in my iMac. Pretty interesting. Alright. Now here we got Safari, the new version, which is, in case you're not familiar with new look, is this icon here. Now the new tab in Safari will show a series of links to several websites like Google, Wikipedia, and so on. Of course, here you can add your favorites. And the new URL bar is here. I don't personally like this layout, but for example, one thing that I can tell you, it's a pain in the neck, is that I couldn't find any suitable Flash player version for Yosemite. Another difference with the previous macOS version is that if you change your default web browser to something else than Safari, as I am about to do here, you'll receive a warning prompting you to uh, confirm or ignore the change. I can find an add-on for Firefox that solves the flash problem and forces the browser to reproduce all videos in HTML5, and which is called YouTube All HTML5. Alright, that said, let's test how a video performs. The performance wasn't very satisfying, mainly because of the screen recording software I was using. In fact, when I quit that software, the video performed almost normally. And because I run in a virtual machine, which anyway runs slower than a physical system because it uses parts of its RAM memory. So that must be kept in mind when you assess a better version like this one. Okay, another thing I wanted to show you is the new behavior of the maximize button on a Finder window confronted with the past. In fact, now this button here brings a window in full screen. Okay, now I return to the normal behavior, but this is really useful for window switchers, for example, and it's different from what you had in the past. In fact, now I'm opening up a different window in the older Finder version. You can see that you don't have the window in full screen like here. But if you don't like this behavior, all you have to do is click the Alt key, also called Option key, while clicking this green button here. And there you go. Okay, an interesting option here is the possibility to use dark menu bar and dock. Honestly, I kinda like that better than the default, so I think I'm gonna keep it. Okay, I created a temporary account just to test the new functionalities because I don't want to mess with my mail that I have in my macOS Mavericks. And now we can test some functionalities of the new mail. Alright, an interesting new feature of mail is the possibility to make annotations to an image directly in the message. Click markup. You have a new menu here where you can add text or other elements. For example, I want to hear head text like this. can change the color of the frame. Alright, so I think it's time for my final wrap up about Yosemite Beta 1 review. I think it's a very interesting and promising operating system, but there's still much work to get done to make it stable and reliable. And you can tell it's pretty much a work in progress. And one thing is really clear, which is that Apple wanted to fill a gap existing between iOS, which is the mobile version of its operating system, and macOS, which is the desktop version. But though I read some enthusiastic reviews and comments about this online, I'm not 100% sure this is totally a good thing. It can be good for mobile users because they pretty much find on a desktop the same interface they're familiar with, but I'm not 100% convinced that what works good for a mobile environment works decently on desktop too. I hope I'm wrong, but I think Apple is making the same mistake that Microsoft committed with Windows 8.1 when they tried to appeal mostly mobile users, dissatisfying totally desktop and corporate users who don't give a damn about aesthetics and are more in search of a decent performance and high reliability in the first place. I think that anyway, macOS remains much more reliable and user-friendly than Windows, whatever Microsoft and Windows enthusiasts might say about this. I hope that with the release of the official Yosemite version in the coming fall, some of the features I'm not really convinced will be reviewed and improved, and that the new operating system will be more stable and reliable than the one I tested today. But in my review, I have necessarily to keep in mind that I needed to use a virtual machine, and that affects severely the performance of the operating system I tested. So that's all I got to say for today. I hope I didn't get you too much bored, and see you in the next video.